Hello everybody and welcome to the Climate Action Talk Tent. So we have hijacked the Talk Tent as part of European Researchers' Night to talk about climate action that's happening within the university and beyond the university's walls, but how we as higher education institutions should be supporting that type of work and moving more into that space. So the idea for the tent came about after conversations held within and around the college after COP last year. So Trinity has observation status for COP, and a number of people went last year, and we did some sharing back afterwards, and that's when we realised we're not very good at talking to ourselves about the work that we do when it comes to climate, much less other people. So today's tent is a bit of a drive to start driving community and start driving those conversations further. The format for the talks today, they're all fairly similar. We're going to do 5-minute spotlights of each of our lovely guests' work, and then we'll have a bit of a chat ourselves, and then we'll open up the questions to the floor. So to introduce myself, my name is Anne Kearns. I'm the Education, Public Engagement and Policy Manager for the Co-Centre for Climate, Biodiversity and Water, which is the longest title in the world to say that my job is talking to people about climate. That's it. So I just wanted to say the Co-Centre's job is we're a cross UK, Ireland and Northern Ireland initiative. We're trying to bring a lot of stakeholders together to make change happen and evidence-based informed policy so that we're actually working with as informed data as we can to tackle some of these big issues. And so to do that, we have to bring as many people together in the room who are already doing the thing that could be really helpful. And on that note, I just want to recognise that climate action and all the global crises we face right now are challenging and difficult. They're complicated, multi-layered issues, and they need a plurality of responses. So on that note, in this room, we will be nice and polite and receptive to all different ways of thinking and acting and hearing other opinions, because that's the only way we're going to tackle this change, is if we can all come together with our differences. So today I am joined by some lovely faces, some in person, some online, as you can all see. So we're going to hear directly from communities who are already taking on challenging work in their localities, and we're going to flip the narrative a bit. So for anyone who's just come into the tent, the session before this, we heard about how researchers within Trinity are working with communities on the ground, and now we're going to flip the narrative for communities already doing the work and how we as higher education institutions can support that work more or better, or how, or if you want us to get involved at all, or we should just stay away. So we're joined by 2 community groups from all over the country, basically. So we have Connecting Cabra here in Dublin, which is Katrina and Brian, who's on screen, and Katrina Kenny and Brian Gormley. And then we have Paul McCullough, who's joined us from Clonishka in Cork. Yeah, I had a moment of I don't remember where in Cork it is. But anyway, so firstly, thanks to all of you for joining. So maybe Katrina and Brian, if you want to go first to talk about Connecting Cabra, and then we'll come to Paul. Yeah? So I don't know which one of you is going to take the lead. This is when it gets awkward.
I will. Okay, so Connecting Cabra is a sustainable energy community that was established in 2021. And we set up initially to get an energy master plan done for Cabra, but very quickly in our establishment realised that the climate, biodiversity and human rights crisis is occurring across the world and happening now are all interlinked, and we couldn't just look at energy alone. Also, I think it would be very boring if that's all we looked at. So we undertook kind of a visioning exercise when we established and looked at what areas we'd focus on, like food security, green infrastructure and transport, biodiversity, clean air, etc. So that's what we do. We have a great committee and great group of volunteers, and we've been involved in loads of different projects, including a Creative Ireland project in the last year and a European Commission supported energy citizen-led renovation energy project that's happening at the moment. But basically we do everything from taking over parking spaces and turning them into mini parks, to doing cleanups, to doing research and putting reports together for Dublin City Council to take heed and make changes in our local area. But we also collaborate quite a bit with our neighbours, again realising that climate change doesn't see borders, that you can't just come to Cabra and think that Phibsborough isn't affected or Stoneybatter isn't either. So we work with our neighbours and anchor institutions in our area to affect change as a wider group. And yeah, it's great.
Perfect. Brian, do you have anything to add?
No. Listen, I think that was brilliant. Great introduction, and I'll add stuff later. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, and then Paul, do you want to talk about Clonishka?
So I'm part of a local rivers group in Clonakilty called Clonishka.
Have to hold it up a little. Yeah.
And we started out as a direct result of the climate crisis. So we were kind of feeling a bit despondent of what was going on. So we decided we would do something in our locality. And there was lots of ideas, but then a rivers group formed from that. And kind of came from a place of not knowing much at all. But we very quickly then formed, met once a month, and then we became a hub for a Dutch-based NGO called Drinkable Rivers. And we were the first hub in Ireland for them, so they sent us a measurement kit, and we could start measuring the river and learning about what was going wrong with it. But we were very aware that there was, it was basically got to do with intensive farming, because we were getting lots of algae blooms in the bays. But as time went on and we were taking measurements, we got more and more people asking us questions about the river, not just about its problems, but also where's the source? What's the name of the river? Some people didn't even know the name of the river in the village or the town. And that just led us down a whole journey of becoming a group that was representing not just our little river, but then a lot of rivers in West Cork. And then for me, that became a deeper journey of wanting to get that story out, that it was more of a connection to the rivers. So for the last 2 years, we've been running kind of kick-sampling workshops. We started up a program with the schools called To Know a River, which is working with primary schools. What else? We have lots of different things going on. Oh, we write a monthly column in the local paper, and that covers everything from history, folklore, anything, but it's all river-based. And yeah, it's taken us on a journey we didn't really expect, but 2 years in, every time I finish one version of the project, something else comes up. It just keeps going. And one thing I have found...
Sage nodding happening behind you on that note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess right now at the moment we're working on a booklet, which is through Law Pro, but we're putting a booklet together about our local river, and even that has turned up lots of other interesting things. So I don't really know where it's going, except for we're very passionate about what we do, and we want to keep getting the message out there that it's not doom and gloom with what's going on. There's definitely things that are improving, and I was lucky enough to go to Finland last year, and they had the same problems with their rivers, but what I really found interesting what they were doing is they were putting things into place like gravel beds, nesting boxes, clean up the bank sites, preparing everything for when the rivers are cleaner, that things move back quicker. I don't find that's happening here yet. It's a lot of talk about nitrates and the problems that are happening. So I found that very encouraging and something we'd like to be part of too.
Yeah, that's a really great idea.
Yeah.
The idea of starting to build now for the changes you're going to make effective.
Yeah, and they were pulling, and what we're going to talk about hopefully later, they were pulling academics onto these projects with them. So, because us as a group, we're coming from like a community base, so when we go to talk to landowners or come up with ideas, we have no real backing. But if we can get backing from people who actually have the science to prove what we're actually trying to improve on, then we can actually move more. Yeah.
I think that's, like Mairead actually mentioned it earlier as well. Cormac Russell talks a lot about asset-based community development, and I think that's what both your groups have done without maybe knowing that's the term, but it is what you've done, where you've looked at yourselves and been like, well, what can we do within our remit? What can we do right now? Yeah. How can we use each other's skills? I'm speaking for you now, and I'm sorry. But you can give us examples of how and why you've done this work. But I suppose the thing I wanted to get to is like, you're already doing these incredible projects. And what's the, like, blue sky thinking, what is the support you would like from the likes of Trinity? Or do you want support at all? Like, I think that's part of the question too. You're going to have to shout into the mic now, Katrina.
Brian, is it okay if I answer that?
Yeah, go on, yeah.
Okay, it's very, very rainy. Particularly when you look at a group of volunteers, and often people who volunteer volunteer in more than one area in their lives, and are often overcommitted and overstretched in the first instance. And oftentimes, educational institutions can support community groups through a variety of ways, but what we found in Connect and Cabra is that we've gotten a lot of research done or support evidence that we can then use to lobby or enhance the work that we're doing, and that's really helpful. But it has to be done in a way that, and I think Marie touched on this earlier on, that it's easy for the community to tap into, right? You can't expect a community group to meet with you every week, and without tea and coffee or without, travel expenses or whatever might be covered. You only get that for a short amount of time, and then eventually communities become jaded and go, oh, somebody's pulling out of us again. We're already stretched in 10 different directions. So providing easy entry kind of projects is really important, so that it's transparent and easy for a community to engage with a university. And by that I mean, like, it's clear from the start what the university want from the community and what the community can gain from that relationship. Because sometimes you're kind of, I suppose, engaged through, not false pretenses, but you're told, oh, look, you get to work with this big university, or you get to work with these group of researchers. But actually, they're taking more from your time and energy than you're getting back. And I'm not saying that you need to get money, but if you're told at the end, you'll have this piece of research that you can use to lobby, or you can use in your reporting, or in whatever, that you kind of know from the get-go what you're going to get out of it at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a great point, and Paul, I'll come to you in a second, but something I talk about a lot is that within these institutes, they are exploitative by nature when it comes to this type of work. They are used to being insular and taking data to make a thing, and that it is theirs and their name on it. But actually, and it's a challenge for researchers as well, that they have to change their modus operandi, right? Of like, well, how do we share something that we haven't shared before? How do we collectively do something? And I think you're right as well when there can be too open an ask, as in, we're going to create a thing. It's going to be great, right? Because we're co-creating it, so it's fine, as opposed to listening first to what a community actually needs, like an evidence base, or building for a future river, like putting mechanical supports in, or whatever it needs to be, right? And I don't know if you want to come in there as well, Paul, about...
Well, there was I think it was privately funded, but there was an ecologist asked to do a scoping project on 2 rivers in our catchment. And he had to approach the landowners, find out what would the barrier be to having a rewilding from source to sea. I think it was 8 meters from the bank each side. And this is heavily farmed countryside. And you talk about evidence-based. They wanted to know, if they gave up their 8 meters, what would it be as a farmer? How could they pass on their land, or what payment would they get? So he had to go back and research this and build up a kind of a narrative that these are the possibilities. This is the funding. This is what's coming on the line. And then there was a consultation, a kind of a meeting of everybody from the locality. So there was our group, there was landowners, there was people who kind of were excited about a possibility of a river being rewilded from source to sea. And then it kind of went flat again. But in the last month, 5 farmers up near the source have bought into the idea now, and they want to rewild at least, I don't know, it could be like 4 kilometers, but it's a start. And if they come into that, they'll show the other farmers, hopefully, that there's a payment and things happening. And that was just from an ecologist getting funded to go and ask the questions and having his science back what was going to be happening. And that might be a possibility now. So that's kind of where I see groups like ours being able to be involved with that. And we are involved with that project, but we had an academic come in and give the answers to the people who were asking the questions that we didn't have the skill set to do.
Yeah. And is it that so from what you're saying, is it you generally need one kind of expertise? Like, do you find when you are working with the likes of us or other universities or institutions, like a problem I face is there isn't joined up thinking even within the institutes themselves. So while you might need an answer on the farming repayments, I might have to go to an entirely different school within the university to get answers.
Yeah, and I found the colleges that we were talking to had to do the same thing. And he had to, and even at the meeting, he had to pull those people in to be able to speak for those. And there was a lot of mistrust till the conversation was had by all.
Yes, that idea of plurality again, that you need everyone in the room.
If he was just saying it, they would think he was just saying it for the sake of saying it. But he had the experts in being able to say, this is what you get, this is what will happen. And now there's buy-in. It's small, but it's a start.
Well, I think that's it. Any actionable steps at the moment help. Yeah, Brian, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Just in dealing with the university, I think you probably need to separate dealing with researchers or dealing with kind of community engagement where students might be doing a project. And I think each of the outputs, I think the university needs to be very careful that what is being produced is of value to the community group. So in many cases, if you're working with a researcher and it's going to be a research paper, it might influence policy in Europe, but it needs to be presented in a way that the community group can use it in their material, or that it might become an RTE brainstorm kind of article or something like that. And similarly with student groups, you know, we've had engagement with classes from universities where there was going to be a project, and we put quite a bit of work into it. Katrina put quite a bit of work into it, and then at the last minute was like, oh, the students weren't really interested, and they didn't, you know, so we've cancelled the event because students didn't want to do it, and we've, you know, quite a bit of work had been done in. So again, there needs to be yeah, just a kind of commitment on both sides. And sorry, and we've also done work with student groups where we got a planning document for Cabra that has been of huge value in dealing with DCC. So there needs to be a useful object for both sides at the end of it.
And sometimes that comes in practical tools as well. If you're looking at kind of scientific research, we were very lucky to get traffic monitoring equipment in Cabra. We have a culverted river running under Cabra, and quite a lot of flooding issues. And I've been putting it out there that I'd love some gully monitors for Cabra, just to build up. When we're speaking, we're a group of volunteers, various different backgrounds, levels of expertise. We don't walk around with our credentials on t-shirts, although we did get Connecting Cabra hoodies. But when you're saying to people, look, flooding is increasing, look, you're concreting over your front garden, there's a river running under here, sometimes actually having hard evidence by saying scientists have done research in this area and we can tell you that X amount of water is coming through, or X amount of cars are going down this road, that really supports a community group, because it's not just us saying it, it's someone else saying it. And it's terrible that institutions like universities carry that, I suppose, kudos and trust, and you think that Katrina standing on the corner of the road saying that's what's happening would work, but sometimes it works better when it comes from a scientist, or from, yeah, as I say, like monitoring equipment.
Yeah, well, I think it's taking out the personal, right? The joys of small communities is they are personal, and that can be good or bad, depending on how things have been working. So it can be handy to have the third party. And I think, to Brian, your point about, like, it's as equally devastating when a third party hasn't really thought about what they're asking people to invest in, and then destroys that trust, basically, by making a quick, like, no, we can't be bothered kind of scenario. Synthesizing. But I think it's quite common, because it can be a tick box for us, but it's people's hours of their time on the other side, right? So we need to be very careful of how we manage those. And I suppose I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll throw it out to the audience maybe for some further questions. But because I'm trying to find hopeful and actionable steps from today, if you could wish for one thing to make all of this just a little bit easier, and maybe one thing that we could help with, what would that be?
I suppose from being part of a river group, I'd love it to be more accessible, to be able to contact not just the ecology side of things, but also folklore, tapping into like names of wells or hills or stuff that have a connection deeper to the river, that we could then use that in the community to get them to be more connected to it. We have to research a lot of stuff ourselves, but like you're saying, when you have the backing of an academic or a college, and you can get them. So if you could tap into something for 4 weeks in 1 year and just be able to say, this is my idea, this is the research we need to kind of back this, that'd be fantastic. It would.
And can I ask a follow-up question? So now, how do you approach, when you have an ask like that, is there somewhere you can go to, or is it based on personal connections, or do you just blank email until you get response?
Yeah, you kind of you start asking questions, maybe send an email to somebody and they'll send you in a different direction. And yeah, you get there. You always get there. And then, of course, the internet helps. But I was just saying this story to Hazel on the way up. There's a hill in West Cork called Noan Hill. And for years, I didn't pay it any attention. And then when I was looking for the sources of some of the major rivers in the area, 3 of the main rivers came from this hill. And then I was looking back through old books, and I realized its Irish name was Knockowan, which is the hill of the rivers. And then the hill just made perfect sense to me. And then when I seen it from then on, it was a completely different way I looked at that hill, because that was the source, and it was named as the source for all those rivers. I would love to take that kind of knowing from the past and bring that into like our work, not just about what's happening with pollution and different things, but also bring the story, bring the sense of connection back to it. So it'd be good to be able to find academics who would be interested in helping with that too. Different ways. Yes.
So it's like there's a humanities festival across the way as well. We can put you in touch with them. Sorry, Katrina, do you want to go?
So it's my something that could make the work that we do easier is having it be clear what support we can get from universities, and whether sometimes that comes down to really practical things like access to space for meeting, access to research, access to even things like student groups for things like updating our websites, or practical things that we do when we sit together as a committee and go, okay, this is the work we're doing for the next 6 months. We're doing this biodiversity project, we're doing this flood alleviation project, this energy project. How can that be enhanced by, so clearer, I suppose, clearer entry points to engagement with higher level institutions would be good, and it could be, you know.
I'm making eye contact at Michael Foley down there now, head of civic engagement, so just a little listen. Okay, good.
But just knowing that you have that practical support, because oftentimes, as I said already, these are passionate people working on the ground, and I'm not saying that that's not what academics do at the same time. You know, oftentimes academics are activists as well, and but yeah, having access to practical supports, that maybe inviting community groups in to a space and giving them opportunities to engage with one another is that was huge for us in Connecting Cabra. An event was held. It was a launch of a piece of research, and they had an event outside where they put balloons up, and I was quite freaked out when I arrived. I was like, what are all these balloons about? And different community groups stood at the balloons and were invited to introduce themselves to each other. And suddenly we discovered that there was other organizations, other community groups down the road from us, you know, around the corner from us, that were working on the same thing. And then that sped up the work that we were doing because we started to collaborate with each other. And that was facilitated within a university. So yeah, that's a really practical thing that can be done.
Yeah, I think that's something we've talked about before, the power of these institutes as conveners. And sometimes I think we underestimate it because maybe we're not very good at convening ourselves, but actually we can offer those spaces to others. Brian, do you want to come in there, and then we'll ask 1 or 2 questions from the audience?
Yeah, sir. And sorry, someone keeps drilling in the office next door, so I keep running out to ask them to stop. Yeah, I just, with the kind of, if I had a wish, it's that maybe in the work and the research that we're doing around climate action and sustainability, like we'd be very conscious that even in our group, and you know, it's a community group, it's quite middle class, you know, the groups that we're reaching, and that I suppose when universities are working on climate action, if they could reach groups through like sporting groups or key workers like youth and social workers, youth groups and community development groups, to try and get to the people who are being left behind in climate action. Like when we do workshops around retrofitting your house, it's mainly kind of middle class people who can afford to take out loans. So if we could get, and we're trying to work on that area with the European funded project, but it's trying to get the climate action, move it to climate justice, and to work with those groups that are being left behind and make sure that they're being lifted up by investment in climate projects. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Like the universities do have access programs that we could probably, even to send news back of different initiatives that's not necessarily run by us, but run by others could be helpful. Were there any questions in the audiences? One sec.
I'm going to be that annoying. It's more of a comment than a question, but because I was speaking in the previous panel as well, and I think it was the point that Katrina made about time and being realistic about what is possible. And I'm even looking at myself, like Paul is it? Was talking about folklore, and straight away I'm like, oh my God, cool, can I work on that? And then and Anne has worked with me, and I don't have time. But this is the thing, and I think that there's such a difference of scale in the university in relation to, you know, what department you're in and what resources you have, and some areas are way more funded than others and have big teams, and then others are small and passionate groups working on things. So I think if, say, you were coming with a project and it's like, right, in the next 6 months we're working on the river and the flooding, you might find an academic, but they're like, next 6 months I've got nothing. But what I think can be really beneficial with these kinds of things, or even just spending time making connections, is like knowing that actually this person's really passionate about that thing and they want to work with us, and it's not in the next 6 months, but, you know, we sow the seeds and we can find a time to work together at some point. So I think, yeah, the university as a monolith is made up of lots and lots and lots of little different parts and people with different capacities and stuff. So I think just getting to know each other and breaking down some of that will lead to collaborations, but at different time scales and speeds. So yeah.
I'm going to compound it now by also making a comment, and I hate this. But what I was going to say is that we ran an event here yesterday with a number of NGOs from all kinds of different areas, and they too were asking for that idea of if there was somewhere that we could go, a kind of a way in. So we, in civic engagement, we care very deeply about how do we make that work and how does it look, because the expression of how you do that, I think people have this idea in their head that you go into a little kiosk and sit down with somebody and that they kind of say, well, you need to talk to such and such a person. And actually, it's probably a bit more sophisticated than that in terms of how on earth do you find the people who, A, have the space to be able to work with you, B, are interested in what you're interested in, and C, then can be in it for the long haul with you, so that they're not kind of, or if you only need something kind of short term, how they can kind of drop in and drop out of that. So it's not so much a case of a service. We need to create a dance that everybody can do. Some of them will be doing it backwards and some of them will be doing it forwards. But that means we'll have to teach you to dance as well, the same steps, but in a different direction. So it'd be great actually if you could comment on that as an idea, as opposed to this idea of having a little kiosk.
Is it okay if I just come in on that? So at the weekend, just gone, I was in Imma at the Earth Rising Festival, and the social enterprise that I co-founded, which is a garden sharing project that matches up people who don't have gardens with people who do have gardens, and they grow in each other's spaces. We created this speed dating game where we were matching up people based on skills. So when you were speaking there, Michael, I was thinking about some form of academic community speed dating event where we have like offers and wants where we could match people up, because oftentimes we've been contacted by academics, or it's just we've happened upon something that's going on. But it would be great to have a space where you can say, these are the projects we're working on, this is what we're looking at for, and then it could be matched up, and I'm picturing that as some kind of speed dating event.
Dancing. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that even within the campus, it's quite difficult for us as students to sort that out ourselves. And I know it's hard for the undergrads to sort out how to connect with postgrads, and then how to figure out what comes next and what can they do in the community. So I think the speed dating app I love needs to also have some sort of level of I don't even know, just Yeah, just a bit more from the students too, because you were saying you'd love to know what students can help out, and I know they want to help. So that's all.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be too complicated. I think if you have an idea as a group and you put it out to maybe, say like Trinity, and say, this is my idea, is there an academic or students who are interested in this to come back, and then just bounce ideas. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to take hours of your time or vice versa. It's just you might have questions and they might have the answers, and they also might be very interested in what you're doing. So it might turn into something, but it can be very simple.
I think that's a good point. I think we get caught up that they have to be these big European projects or whatever. And there is a thing about how we all track our impact, which is as equally important in certain community groups for funding and different things. But there's probably definitely a point of like, we can just do fast clinics. Like they don't have to be huge projects. They can come with time, and then it builds trust and builds communication and all kind of the things we're saying. On that note, I think we're going to finish because we're pushing time. Brian, did you want to come back in on anything before we go? Or
No,
Trina?
super. Just thanks a million for asking me along, and well done on all your work. Thank you.